Okay, today's quick deep dive is into the connection between the ancient Temple of the Hebrews and the modern LDS temple rituals and ceremonies. Just showing how they do correlate. Okay, so this is just a map of the ancient temple with its 7 furnishings. We've got the altar of sacrifice, so this is the front gate where you walk in. This is facing east, this way is east, this way is west, north, south. Okay, so the first thing that you come across is the altar of sacrifice, where lambs were slain for the sins of the people. We had the laver, which was a basin of purified water that the priests would have to wash in before they were ready to enter the temple proper. So I'm pretending that the boundary of this whiteboard is the outer walls of the temple courtyard. And in here is the temple proper. So once you enter the temple proper, or the high priest would enter the temple proper, or the priests would enter the temple proper, on their right would be the lamp, menorah, and which would be always lit, and on the left would be the table of shewbread with the 12 times 2 loaves that the priest would partake of. Moving further into the temple, there would be an altar of incense which the priests would light and offer up prayers unto God. Then we have the veil separating the holy place from the Holy of Holies. Only the high priest was allowed to enter the Holy of Holies. Within the Holy of Holies itself was the Ark of the Covenant. On the top of the Ark of the Covenant was the lid was called the Kaparet, or the mercy seat, with its 2 facing cherubim, sometimes depicted in conjugal embrace. Within the Ark itself was kept the stone tablets of the 10 Commandments. Okay, now I'm going to do a much deeper dive into these last 2 furnishings, the mercy seat atop the Ark of the Covenant, because the significance of this in terms of ancient teachings, ancient knowledge, lost wisdom, what Joseph Smith brought back, what other people in the Gnostic movement have revitalized the knowledge of. It's so important that I'm going to do a separate video on that because it needs a much bigger video. Anyway, okay, so the altar of sacrifice. Are we still doing animal sacrifice today? No, we're not. As Christ taught, what was now required is a sacrifice of our earthly desires, a broken heart, contrite spirit. So this is a sacrifice of our ego natures. So in our modern temple, this altar is represented by the front desk, where you have to show a pass to say that you have essentially done this, that you have essentially sacrificed your earthly desires, you've given up smoking, drinking, substance abuse, infidelity, all these kinds of egoic-based behaviors. Obviously, beforehand, you've had an interview where you've confessed that you are not doing any of these things. That gives you the pass. So the front desk actually takes the place of the altar of sacrifice, where you show that a clean slate, where you show that you've sacrificed all of your earthly habits and ego-based behaviors. So then moving further into the temple, yes, there is a baptismal font, which of course is exactly the laver, but that's done for those who have passed beyond. So this is kind of split into 2. We've got baptismal rituals happening for those who have passed beyond, but for those who are going through for themselves, which is what we're really talking about here in this process, the laver is the washings and anointings, where you basically receive purifying rituals, readying you. So that's why it's called an initial processes before you're ready to enter the temple proper. So you're anointed with water and with oil. Now, water is obvious. The laver is filled with water. But why oil? Now, everybody always says, well, oil is connected to the spirit, but why? Let's think about what oil actually does. I would say that oil is it's not a symbol of the spirit. It is a symbol of somebody who is prepared to receive a spirit. If you think about a lamp, you put oil in the lamp, the oil itself is not going to give you light. It's not going to give you heat. But the oil is the substance that enables you to hold the heat. So what the oil does, why you're anointed with oil, it is because you are being prepared as a vessel that is enabled to hold the spirit, that is enabled to receive the further light and knowledge that you're about to receive when you enter into the temple proper. So moving from that, and of course you're given a new name, which is a symbol of a change of putting off your old self, really. Putting off your old self and taking on a new identity. Okay? So entering into the temple proper, how does the menorah and the shewbread relate to what goes on in the temple now? What goes on in the temple now is a receiving of knowledge, light, and truth and ordinances. So light and truth and ordinances. Ordinances are structures. The bread represents the structures of the gospel, the rituals, the practices, the things that will nourish you, like bread nourishes you and gives your body substance in order to grow and develop. Okay? So the bread itself, the ordinances are not they're not the truth. The ordinances are not truth. Light and knowledge is the truth, but they are things that can help prepare your vessel. Again, another preparing of your vessel. So, because rituals have a huge impact psychologically on human beings. Symbols, metaphors, they sink a lot deeper than just words. So when we're doing these practices and these rituals, even if we're not understanding them on the conscious level, well, one would hope that on a deeper level, it's still preparing you spiritually for higher knowledge, right? Anciently, of course, in the inner circle societies, they would actually teach them what their rituals and practices meant symbolically. So that doesn't really happen so much now. Well, at least not in the Mormon churches. They're just, you do the ordinances and rituals and you're instructed to go away and take it to God, which is a good principle anyway. So that's a fine principle, to just take it away and ask God yourself. And I'm going to talk more about that principle later, actually. It's an important principle. That if you really are prepared and you really are taking this in on a deeper level, you will be able to receive personally more instruction and understanding through your direct relationship with the divine. Okay, so then at the front of that first room, before the veil, in the modern temple, there is another altar. In the ancient temple, there was an altar there too. And what happens at that altar? Prayers are offered up on behalf of the people. And that is exactly what the priests used to do. Anciently, the high priest would offer up, he would burn incense, and the incense going up to God represented prayers going up to God on behalf of the people. Another purifying ritual, another preparatory ritual. Obviously, there needs to be more preparation made, more purification in order to enter into the even higher, holier space of the Holy of Holies, to penetrate the veil that lies between the two realms, really, and psychological realms. And there is a big gap between this space and this space psychologically, and I'm going to talk more about that in detail in another video. But just to briefly talk about this Holy of Holy space and how that corresponds. In the modern temple, we have the celestial room. Does the celestial room currently have something representing the Ark of the Covenant and the mercy seat? No, it doesn't. This is just a big empty space, or it has chairs and stuff for people sitting around in. Now, why is that? I'll tell you why that is. Because the Ark of the Covenant, the mercy seat, that those aspects have been separated out from this space, because they are a whole nother level. They actually are a whole nother level above, spirit in terms of spiritual development, and they have been put into another room or other rooms called sealing rooms. And in the sealing room, what happens is that a husband and wife come together across an altar. The altar represents the Ark of the Covenant, and the husband and wife represent the two cherubims, which represent the masculine and the feminine coming together in holy union. It is the sacred marriage. Hieros gasmos, I think, is the word for it in ancient times. The sacred union of the two separated opposing aspects coming back together as one, and that's what the covenant means, the Ark of the Covenant. The covenant is the two coming together in one in God and becoming together jointly reunified with the divine, and that it is through that marriage union that man can ultimately reconnect with the divine. So this is separated into another space altogether for those who manage to reach that higher place of being worthy and ready to marry and be sealed. And that's why we use the word sealing, because it's not just coming together and being two people hanging out. It's being sealed and fused together into one being. Now, there's much more to that. I've touched on it in earlier videos. This idea of being fused back together in holy union is a very ancient concept, originating back at the time of Adam and Eve, where the one being became the two. So we're undoing the effects of the fall. Anyway, but in terms of Joseph Smith's understanding of these deeper principles, I'm going to explore that further in my next video. So hopefully that just gives you a little overview of how the modern temple is still playing out the patterns of the ancient temple. Potentially, yeah, there's still a lot more that people need to understand, how this actually applies internally, because this is all just an external ritual designed to facilitate people having inner processes, psychological processes, in terms of psychologically reuniting with the higher consciousness. So anyway, more about that in the next video, where I'm going to do a much deeper dive, some really, really, really interesting things.